You're listening to the Sis You Can Do This podcast, and we are your hosts, Roshana
and Melissa. We're faith-driven women who hope to share with you all things lifestyle, wellness, purpose, and of course, Jesus. Thanks in advance for listening.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sis You Can Do This podcast. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy 2025.
Yes.
We are well into 2025 at this point. And we just hope everybody's doing well and your goals and everything that you set out to do, that you're well on your way. And if you've fallen off the wagon, just get back on, right? Get back on. So, Roshana, Happy New Year. What's been going on so far?
What's been going on? What has not been going on? No, it's been a good year, good start to the year. Just locking in, staying focused. And so as I say focus, I believe that was kind of one of the words that God really put on my heart this year.
Right.
You know, we always get like a corporate word. Your church may have a corporate word, but for me individually, I'm like, okay, God, what is it that you want me to do this year? What you want me to tap into? Mm-hmm. And I just heard focus and, you know, slow things down, be in the moment, be in the present. And I think that has a lot to do with like, you know, being on your phone all the time and just missing little things. Right. And being very distracted or very busy. Like I'm always like, okay, got to do this. And I'm on to the next thing before the first thing's already done. Right. So, you know, I heard another pastor say being unhurried. And I like that. And I'm like, unhurried. You know, unhurried. I don't know if that's, we don't know, but we're going with it. Yeah, we're going with it. Going with it. I like it. So yeah, for me, it's been just, you know, focus and take each day and in each moment as it comes. What about you?
I didn't come up with a word this year, or at least not yet. But along the same kind of vibe or theme is, you know, less distractions and also just being intentional about what you want. I'm at this place where I'm towards the end of my 30s and I'm looking at, you know, what 40 could look like or what it will look like. So it's just like, if I want things to look a certain way, then I'd have to start putting some work in now. So probably being more intentional about just the things that I'm hoping for or desiring as I move towards 40.
Oh, yeah. That word.
Yeah, that word.
Well, you know, I'm glad to hear that. And I know, you know, on a personal level, as we've talked over the last, you know, months and so forth, that you've actually stepped into a new season, a new thing.
We're not married yet, folks. So people are getting excited.
Yeah, well, she'll get there. It's coming. Right. I believe it. Right. And that's actually what I wanted us to talk about today. Just, you know, what it's like going into a new season, leaving the old in the past. Right. Embracing the new. And I know you've embraced the new in regards to your career.
Yes.
So, you know, if you don't mind sharing with all the girlies out there and, you know, for you men too that do watch.
They are watching. They're acting like they're not watching, but they come.
See you.
They come over to me and they're just like, I watch your podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's okay.
So
we're glad to have you.
Yeah. So we want, you know, to share. We want you to share how you've been like navigating in this new step, new level, new chapter in general in your career. And yeah, give us more details.
Yeah. So I started a new job at the end of last year, actually in December. And this would be considered a promotion. It's a managerial role. And I'm about 2.5 months in at this point. And it's been going well. And the primary reason for even being where I am right now is that I needed a change. I was with my prior organization for almost 8 years by the time that I left. And on year 7, which makes so much sense because 7 is the number of completion according to the Bible, there was this uneasiness of I need to move. I'm not sure what moving means. Do I get out of my field? Am I getting out of my position? Am I getting out of, you know, the organization? Like, what is this move that I'm sensing that I need to make? And it was like a whole year of me just kind of going back and forth. And I'm just like, well, if I'm moving, I need to start figuring out where I'm moving to. And I started applying for jobs very similar to the job that I had. And it's so crazy looking back at it now because it's like, God is just like, I had so much for you. I have so much for you. And you're going after the small. Like I was just looking at jobs that I knew I could do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so funny. And they always say the counterfeit comes before the real thing always. about 2 months before I got this position, something came up and it looked so exciting. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's kind of more in my field and I can grow in this area. It was like maybe a $2,000 step up as far as money was concerned.
No, we don't want that.
Right. But then I was just saying, oh, maybe this is the change. Maybe I'm just going to go into, more of what I went to school for. And it just completely collapsed. It was just like, it was a consideration, and then the next day the person's just like, no,
because it wasn't what God wanted.
Because it wasn't, but it looked like it. It was very much like a counterfeit bill. It's just like it looked a lot like the opportunity, and it just did not happen. I was a little disappointed, but I'm just like, no, God, maybe you have better, and He did. So then 2 weeks later, I applied for something that I had seen, and they called me immediately, and it was just how I knew God was in it. It was just 1, 2, 3. It was just like, oh, we'd like to invite you for an interview. The interview happens tomorrow. Oh, the next day. And within a week, I had a whole new job with a whole new company. And of course, it was, it would be a way more than $2,000 extra.
Right. Okay.
It was a little more change, and obviously more responsibility, which I was looking forward to. So so I started, and it's been going great. It was a big shift because I was leaving somewhere that I was comfortable at for a very long time. And it almost became a part of my identity, me being with this organization. And then, now I'm just a part of a new organization, and it feels good so far,
That's good. That's good. And that's what it's about, right? We want to make sure that we're stepping into God's best for us. Mm-hmm. So, there are a lot of people who are probably listening and they're like, oh, that's me. I'm looking for work. I'm wanting change. I want to go into a new field, just something new, something different, leave where I've been comfortable, or where even I feel stuck. Because oftentimes we think it's comfortable, but we're just stuck.
We're in a comfortable prison sometimes.
Comfortable prison. There you go. Right. Mm-hmm. So can you then, speak to both the spiritual and I want to say practical things that people can do to get out of that rut, that comfortable prison?
Right. I mean, and you're right. It's an interesting time, just economically, and there are a lot of changes in the world. And I know personally a lot of people who are no longer in the job market because they're looking for something. It's not happening for them, or what they want is not happening. And it really, it makes me a little sad because I do understand that a lot of it is economic things. Some of it is maybe there's a lot more competition out there, and maybe you're not as competitive.
I mean, AI is a big competition right now.
Lots of things
they're getting rid of jobs because of that.
Right. So I think when it comes to that, I empathize. I've been there of being in that rut. It was like a whole year before I got where I wanted to be. And during that time, I felt miserable. I felt, unfulfilled. So I get that. When it comes to the spiritual aspect of it, I mean, I always say pray without ceasing. God knows. And I think when you pray about something specific, let's say you're praying for a new job, or you're praying for a spouse, or you're praying for, your business to take off, or whatever it is, if something specific, you can be one of two things. I think you can either be double-minded about it and say, I mean, God can, but will He? And be almost double-minded about it. Or you can be the person that and at first, let me be honest, at first I was double-minded because a part of me was just like, this is kind of comfortable. I know these people, I know this thing. So I was praying for something new, but then also I'm just like, well, God, maybe this new can be in the parameter of here still. And then I said, no, you want something new for me, God? I'm going to go with you on it. And it's a matter of just recognizing that if God says He has something better for you, He has something better for you, and you can't be the dictator of that.
Right.
And then you have the second person who is just like, I'm just going to I'm going to put it on the altar. I can't do this thing without you. I'm going to give you, or I'm going to pour out to you the sadness that I may feel, or the impatience that I feel, or just the vulnerability of knowing that, this feels very hopeless. And I think that second option of just kind of pouring it all out, I want to say then that God honors that because it's like, this is my child and she's coming to me and she's sad, or she's not hopeful, or she's feeling weak in this moment, and of course the word says where we are weak, that's where He's strong, And it's a matter of saying, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I trust you.
And
I know
many
that
times we don't know what we're doing.
many times, many times. I remember the story in 1 Samuel when David was hiding, from Saul. Saul was on his tail, and him and his men went to go fight, and they came back to where they were settling. It was called Ziklag, and the Amalekites had raided where they were, and took their wives and their children and their stuff. Didn't kill anybody, but took all of these things. And of course, when these men come back from war, their wives are gone, their children are gone, their stuff is, everything is crazy. And it would have been a great moment for David to just, want to probably kill himself. Because, that's a big thing. He had men around him who had lost children and all of that. And he was just like, you know what? In this moment, I'm gonna look for God's strength. It says in 1 Samuel 30, but David found strength in the Lord his God. Like seeing all of this destruction, it's just like it wasn't a moment to, of course they were sad, but it wasn't a moment to break down and just give up. And just in the same way that, he went through that, we go through stuff sometimes, and it's easy to just kind of say, I'm just going to give up. And it's just like, no, David is just like, I found the strength in God. Mm-hmm. And, it was beautiful. And in 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness so that Christ's power can rest on me. And I think that that's just a testament to how, even though things can be difficult, like that's where our strength is. That is where our motivation, our encouragement is. It's just like, I'm gonna find that strength in God, But
That's
yeah. So there are some, when it comes to making a career change, or since we're kind of still on the topic of, careers and changes in general, I think when it comes to that, we have to take a self-assessment and just reflect on what we have, what are our interests, what are our values, what we're passionate about. Because a lot of the times when you're in that rut of, I don't know where I'm going, sometimes it's I don't know what I'll be good at. Like, I've only done this one thing. So how do I go about and, either continue to do this thing or change that thing? And sometimes some self-assessment is needed, right? I had to really think about it. I'm just like, okay, I'm an HR professional by trade, but I also do administrative things. I like to do a little bit of both. I don't think I want to be a full-time HR professional, but I also don't want to be just an administrator. And I really had to sit down and just, what am I good at? Like, what do I want to do? I've been in the working field for over a decade at this point, almost 15 years at this point. What am I good at and what am I passionate about? Because we're coming into a moment in our lives, I think, when you're in the mid-30s, when you kind of know what you want. And it's just like, no, I'm not just going to take anything. Right. I'm going to really, delve into what I'm passionate about and where my strengths lie and all of that. And another practical thing that you can do is, of course, research. There's some industries that are not doing that great right now. So that may not be the place to find work. I had to look long and hard because the field that I'm working in right now is going through a lot of changes. And I had to say, is this the time to move? And I took a chance, but, sometimes it's okay to stay a couple more months just to kind of feel it out and,
right.
And move forward with that. And of course, networking, right? I think just naturally, just networking, asking people, connecting with different professionals in your desired field, looking on LinkedIn and going to industry events and being a part of social communities that can really put you out there and to just, put you in front of the right type of people,
Right. Put yourself out there. And I think that's something a lot of us have a hard time doing.
Right.
Especially even people that are of a different generation. It's hard to It's hard to, put ourselves out there. I mean, I shouldn't even say of a younger generation. It's all of us, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're so comfortable where you are, it's hard to step out and experience new because you don't know what that new looks like. And I think, that applies to relationships, especially that self-assessment part.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Yes,
I think
yes.
I think it's always necessary to do self-assessment, self-reflection. You know, it's before, and maybe you're leaving a long-term relationship or maybe a long-term friendship or whatever it may be, and you're entering into something new. It's good to reflect on, okay, who am I now? Because maybe the
Right.
person that you were when you entered that relationship prior to is not the same person that you're leaving as.
You're most definitely not.
Right. But you need to go, it's good to take that time to go through that self-assessment to make sure you're in, maybe it's not even time to pursue or be in a relationship
That
right
too,
now.
that too.
Right. But with this self-assessment will come those answers. Right. And I think, you know, we can apply it to if you're maybe going to live somewhere else, a different country, a different city. Right. Have you done any networking to know people out there, or have you done the research, as you had mentioned, to is this a good place to go and buy?
Right.
Maybe the housing market in this particular area is not good, or maybe in this country there's a high crime rate. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there, but I think it's
Do your research.
so
Do your
necessary.
homework on stuff. Yeah.
Right, because if you think about it, when we're leaving the old and we're entering the new, we are vulnerable.
Right. Yes.
You know, our weaknesses are more apparent because we're starting something fresh. We're entering into something that we may not know much about, and there's always new challenges to overcome. You know, I think about, as you were talking about that, that when God has called us into a new season, there's such reassurance in the process that He's with us. So it's important that He's in the process.
Right. And you're not just out here doing it.
The process.
Right. Because when you do it by yourself, you have to maintain it by yourself. People don't
Girl,
understand
say that again.
When you do it by yourself, you have to maintain it by yourself.
And it's so true.
God is just
right?
like, I didn't call you there.
I didn't send you.
So I'm not obligated to help you over there.
But with His grace and
Right,
His love
right,
and His
exactly.
mercy towards His people, He will. But it's so much better knowing that God was in this, you know. And I think about Isaiah 43:18-19. This is one of the many favorites that I have. But remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. I mean, that verse alone says God already has it all figured out. You know, it's just for us to stay the course. But it's also important not to take the things of old into, when that could be habits, that could be mindsets. Oftentimes it is mindsets, into the new, to not sabotage what He's trying to accomplish. You know, we think about the verse. He goes, do you not perceive it? I'm already doing a new thing.
Right.
However, don't consider the things of old. And oftentimes I think we're so worried about okay, but this is what I used to do, or this is how it used to look like, or this is, I'm pretty sure your new job is
All
not
the
like your
time.
old job.
Well, it's not. There's some things that are quite similar, but it's so easy for me to say, oh, back when I was at,
Right.
and most of when I first started, that was more so, you know, what I was saying, because a part of me is still trying to get into this new, but having a comfort, you know, from the old. Like I remember that I was, you know, familiar with that thing. So yeah,
So
definitely.
then I ask, you know, in what ways can bringing the old into the new harm us? Can it harm us? Is it harmful? I mean,
I think so, because what happens is that, you know, a lot of people don't talk just about when you pray for something. I always I heard somebody say this: when you pray for rain, expect mud. Like every time you go into a new season, yes, it's exciting. Yes, there's some wonderful things that are happening, but then there's also the challenges that just come with it being in this world, like a thing, right? So for instance, you know, when you were a single lady very long ago, there are some things like the honeymoon phase was amazing. But then probably 3-4 months in, you're like, wait a minute, you know.
this is not what they said. I'm joking.
Right. I mean, and there's some things that you don't quite expect. I mean, you can see the bigger picture now 10 years later, but I'm sure that there were some moments, especially in the beginning, where you're like, wait a minute, I didn't realize, or I didn't know. Right. So sometimes, you know, when it comes to going into the new season, you have to understand that it comes with new things, and you have to, I had to trust that with everything that I've learned in the prior place, that I was in a position to now be successful in the new place. It's like I had to do this. Now it all makes sense. It's just like, oh, I had to go through that because I needed it for this phase of my life, you know. And of course, the responsibilities are different. Even in my new job, it's a managerial position. So there's some things that stop with me. So I'm no longer just a support person, right? I'm no longer the second man in. It's just like, no, where's that report? It is your response. Where is it? And I have to be the one to, to make sure that it's done. The responsibility level has changed. The accountability level it has changed, and it can be harder because it was kind of comfortable to be the second man, and it's just like, well, I'm not going to get in trouble for that. Mm-hmm. Now I am going to get in trouble for that because they're expecting a certain thing from me. So the mindset towards the work now is changed. It's just that somebody said to me, it's just like, you're not a worker anymore. And I'm like, I mean, I am. And I knew what they were trying to tell me, because there are things that I would do behind the scenes. And they're just like, there are people who can do that so that you can allocate time to doing what we're paying you to do. And it's just like, oh, okay, okay. So now I have to do the other stuff. So the mindset definitely has to change as you're going into the new season. And then that's for anything, right? That's for relationships. That's for new jobs. That's for being a mother. I'm sure that there was a shift with you when you became a mom. It's just like, oh, it's no longer about me. Now it's, who cares if I slept?
It's not about me.
Nobody cares.
You got dependents now.
Right. You have dependents now.
Yeah. It's a whole new set of people. It's how I manage my time is a lot different, and that was a shift of like you had mentioned, where it went from waking up worrying about me to now worrying about all these other people, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a huge mindset shift. And like you said, that applies to anything. That if we bring in the old habits, and if they're not, I don't want to say we get rid of everything, because that's often not the case, right? But the old bad ones, the old negative ones, the ones that just, are not for where God is trying to place you or where he has you, those are the ones we need to leave behind.
Right.
Or get healing for, get deliverance for,
right,
or whatever the case may be, so that we don't end up self-sabotaging ourselves.
Absolutely. And I even think about just even in this, this single season that I'm in, that there are things that I'm looking forward to, but I also have to prepare.
Right.
And they're definitely, and it's harder. And I heard somebody say it's just a little bit more challenging when you're old, like when you're in your 30s, for instance, because a lot of the things that you are going to be has already been formed out. Mm-hmm. And it can be challenging to now say, no, but I would prefer, sure, we can do it this way. We can, and learning how to cooperate, like to be in a marriage, like, and it's just, you get instances. I think God puts instances where you can practice, where you can say, okay, I'm going into a new season. I know God is calling me into that, but in this moment, I need to prepare. It's like the children of Israel. Like they were in the wilderness for 40 years and they had to learn how to not be slaves anymore.
Right.
They had to learn how to take God's provision, the manna each day. It's just like understanding that, he gives us, he's a provider. So it's just like every day we're looking forward to what he's going to give to us.
Right.
And it's just in that wilderness period, as we would refer to it in the Bible, it's just that it's an opportunity to prepare for the new season that you're stepping into. And I think God tells you, like, I knew it was time for me to leave that where I was before last year. I knew. And even now I'm just like, I know that God is calling me to to marriage. Like, let me say it freely.
Speak it, girl. Speak it.
It's so hard sometimes, right? But so there are some things that he's preparing my heart for. He's taking away some things that are just not going to benefit that season.
Right.
And I just think, it's a beautiful thing when you're going through and then you can look back and say, oh, that's why I needed to, have this instance or this situation with this person so that I can know how to deal with it in a marriage. Or I needed to know how to phrase things a certain way because now I'm talking to the VP of something, a VP as opposed to just Joe Schmo. You know what I mean?
Who clocked in, right.
Somebody who clocked in like me. So it's just, it's amazing how, God prepares us as we're stepping into new seasons,
Yeah, I like that. And just really being able to recognize when it's time to let go of those things. Because you did mention that, and that's important. Oftentimes we still want to hold on. And God's like, no, I need you to now change that. You brought up the Israelites, right? That mindset. Many of them were still back in Egypt. And he's like, you are walking into, you are free. But the mindset was there, not wanting to let that go. It caused so much turmoil, caused them to be there much longer than they needed to be, right? And sometimes you're right. We're in these places where we don't need to be only because we don't want to release what God has already released us from.
Right.
And that's so important to recognize that. Well, before we wrap up, I know you had just a little bit more extra tips for people that, are making a career change that's the most recent thing that you've gone through. What are some steps that, could help someone who's like, once again, listening to this and it's like, I'm ready to make that change. What else can I do?
Right. Well, I think from a practical standpoint, I would say develop your skills. Like maybe you're in a field and there's a credential, there's a designation that you could get to, make your resume look a little bit more appealing. I think that's always good. I mean, when I worked in HR and I looked a lot of people who continually were growing in their, in their careers, it's like, oh, she got a project management certificate. Oh, beautiful. And I would, those things would be of value to me as somebody who looked at resumes a lot. And of course, making your resume more appealing in that same instance and putting your stuff on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a good way to...
When you say more appealing, are we adding borders to the resume or?
I mean, no.
Okay. Just making sure.
More so editing, of course, getting it professionally done. I mean, AI is good for stuff like that at this point in history. Making it just more readable, the words maybe that you're using. So instead of you'd say, oh, I managed, or, using very strategic words in there. I think that's helpful. And getting a job search strategy, right? It's am I going to apply for a job a day? Am I going to apply to 1 million jobs? I would say don't do that. There's some people who just apply. And it's just like, no, take time to see what you really want and what you're really good at. And then be intentional about, the wording and the stuff that you're using. I think quality over quantity is always better when it comes to stuff like that. And I think from a spiritual standpoint, I also want to say that, sometimes God has you in a certain season for a reason. Sometimes you're in the wilderness for a reason, in that in-between period. And it's just listen to what he could potentially be saying in that season. Because I think that when they were in the wilderness, he was trying to tell them something. And it took them 40 years to hear him. You know what I mean? It took them longer than it needed to for them to hear that, no, I'm trying to show you that I'm a provider. I'm trying to show you that you're no longer bound. I'm trying to show you these things, and they just weren't catching it. So I'd say that if you're in a wilderness period, as we'd call it, listen. It's just like, what is God trying to tell me in this moment? Is it you're trying to remove pride? You're trying to get me to advance myself? You're trying to get me to whatever the case is. But listen, I think that a lot of listening did not happen for me in the 1 year that I was kind of stuck. And then listening started happening more towards the end. It was just like, God, what are you trying to tell me here? Because you're trying to tell me something. But yeah, so that's just, kind of just some strategies if you're, in that season of trying to get into a new career, get out of a rut.
No, that's good. I like it. And I think we should talk about that wilderness season. I feel like it would be a very good topic because many of us have been there and have experienced that. So before you tune out, I just want to say thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Sis You Can Do This podcast. Within this conversation, we hope that, if you are stepping into a new season or a new journey, that you take this opportunity to trust God and trust him for real, knowing that he's going to show up, knowing he's going to show off, and he has the very best for you. Do the practical things, just as Melissa mentioned. Mm-hmm. Understand that new seasons can bring forth great results, but it also stretches you in the process, right? Be patient with yourself and embrace the changes with an open mind. If you have any tips on how to effectively step into a new season, please let us know. Send us an email at the sisyoucandothis@gmail.com. You can comment or, send us a DM on Instagram at sisyoucandothis. And don't forget, you can rate and share this podcast and leave a review.
Until next time, sis, you can do this.